This is Joe Pugh for IFLTV. We're here at the Wasserman office, Aldwych House, London. Delighted to be joined by Mr. Kalle Sauerland. Kalle, how are you, mate?
I'm very good. How are you, Joe? How are you, Coogan?
All good.
Good, yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
Coogan's behind, yeah, just here. What is actually the purpose for today? I know you've got your young prospects here doing media duties.
Well, you know, normally we've got a big fight week coming up next week, and thought we'd get in early. No, I think it's a nice time to bring some of the young crop coming through at Wasserman Boxing here into the Tower of Power here in the Strand today, and good to see you guys here as well. So let's have a chat.
Yeah, we'll talk about them four boxers first of all. Lucas Rorig, your latest big marquee signing under the tutelage of George Groves. Every kind of fight I've seen him in a Wasserman ring, outside of a Wasserman ring, he's impressed, hasn't he?
Yeah, and look, he's impressive. He's got George Groves behind him. I'm from Notting Hill. He's from Notting Hill. So, it's a bit of a West London connection there. And cruiserweights, well, I think I've had about 12, 13 cruiserweight world champions in my time. So I see a good one. And I like the division. I see someone who can go on and be a world champion. So Lucas Rorig is one that we're going to back. George, he knows his stuff in and out. Even as a fighter, I used to listen to a lot of George's opinions on other fighters because he has a great boxing mind. And I think he's backing the right horse, and if he's backing him, we're certainly backing him.
Matty Harris, someone who took his loss, changed camp, now with Peter Fury, doing a lot of things different by his own admission, and we're seeing the improvement slowly but surely now. Yeah,
look, I was very critical of Matty at the time. I sort of slammed him a bit because I felt he got lazy. He had some real knockouts, which you expect at that stage of a career. He's been fed sort of journeyman, and he's supposed to put them away, and he was doing that. And then, I think he got ahead of himself. But there's no getting ahead of yourself when you work with Peter Fury. I think that's a dynamic that will either make or break Matty Harris. He's a very, very big, talented, hard-punching heavyweight. It's a great time for the heavyweights. You're sort of looking at that next generation now, Obviously not looking past the Usyk-Dubois fight, which is a fantastic fight, but you sort of look at, the likes of Tyson Fury, Usyk, Anthony Joshua. Sooner or later, the mantle's going to get passed to that next generation, and Dubois is definitely spearheading that at the moment. But there's some great talents coming through. Moses, obviously, Atuma, great fight with Didion White. Looking forward to see that. It's an exciting scene, and it's exciting what's coming through. So David Adelaide, Hrgovic as well was one that interests me. There's lots of interesting fights being made, Fabio Wardley, another name, who's, coming through at a later stage of life in a very interesting way of going through. And even Justice Hooney, is another one. So there's lots of names that are coming through for that next generation. So just, very interested to see how Matty can do. We're backing him. Peter Fury's backing him. And generally, Peter Fury's one of the trainers I respect the most in terms of what how he talks boxing, how he thinks boxing, and very, very excited.
How far away for Matty do you think we are from maybe an English title? Kind of at a lower level, but a domestic fighter that people can get their teeth into?
I think English title, we're going to be there in the next fight or two. British title, certainly one for next year, and it's got to be. He's now been around a few years, so he's changed camps, changed his approach. but there's no time like the present, you know. And I think that British title is going to be an interesting situation next year, and one that we definitely want to be in the mix for. So this year's about building up to that.
Dan Tower would come back after his first career loss in Brighton a few months back. Looked good. Went in with a few demons, he openly said, and he come out after a brutal knockout. But yeah, good to see him back.
On paper, definitely, probably the most exciting prospect in British boxing. You look at his amateur achievements. You know, all those those domestic championships, 10-time national champion. But you know, it's boxing, and you know, an early loss can either make or break a career. I've seen it obviously at slightly different stages. We saw it with Vladimir Klitschko. He went off and, you know, he took the 3 losses and then reigned for 10 years. Not making comparisons there, but in boxing, it is what you make of a loss. And, it was a shock. I think Dan was probably the most shocked, and I was probably second most shocked. But he is a phenomenal talent, and I'm not going to judge him on, which was, I'm going to say it was a fluke shot. I don't believe in fluke shots. You throw a shot to find a chin, and he got caught. And that can happen early in a career. It can happen later in a career. So hopefully it was the right wake-up call he needed. Made some adjustments, and that doesn't really change for me the fact that he's probably the hottest prospect in British boxing coming through from the amateurs.
Certainly, and finally, Thomas Welland. Impressed kind of every fight, really. He's been pretty much punch perfect in his pro career so far.
And what a character, one of your own, Essex finest.
Yeah. Wickford Massive?
Yes, Wickford Massive, there you go. You have to tell me where Wickford actually is, but
Coogan's hometown.
Coogan's hometown, there you go. He's got claim to fame there, Coogan, Wickford, Wickford Massive.
Who's the most famous man in Wickford, Tom Welland or Coogan Cassius?
I'd say probably currently it's still Coogan, but we're going to change that. Coogan's going to change that.
Jordan Banjo.
Or Jordan Banjo is on our roster at Misfits now, top fella.
Brian Belau. Who? Brian Belau. Do you know who that is?
I haven't heard of Brian Belau, no.
Brian Belau is the first ever Big Brother winner.
Oh,
okay.
Gosh, yeah, no, I do remember him, yeah. Crikey, you take me back a few years there.
First ever one.
Yeah, wow. That was actually when I watched Big Brother. I watched the first 2 seasons, never watched it again.
Brian Belau been in touch to get on Misfits? Or?
Not yet, but he must be as old as me, so I don't know if he's going to be on Misfits, but
check
yeah.
that stat quickly while you carry on.
Yeah. Fact check. Fact check.
I'm not too sure about that one. But in any case,
Back to Tom Welland, not the Grand Tour of Essex.
Yeah, I was just about to say, listen, he is not only a phenomenal, he's like the Filipino Flash from Essex, Essex meets the Filipino Flash.
Sorry, just a correction. The first ever Big Brother winner was Craig Phillips, but
Him I remember.
But Brian Belau did win Big Brother.
What year?
Good.
Carry on.
So come back to Tom Welland. Look, he's had the benefit of being on that Channel 5 opening space platform, had huge live viewers, and he's really performed, Sometimes a little bit too much, too much getting into wars early on in a career, but you see he's got everything it takes, personality-wise, star-wise, ambition, he's the full ticket.
Excellent. Kalle, go on.
2007.
2007.
Big Brother 8, so that stat was widely out.
I'd retired on my Big Brother viewing by that time, Coog.
2007. I was 3 years old.
Don't start, mate.
Right, Kalle, we're 10 days away from Jack Catrol versus Hearn Eubank. It's come around quick, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, boxing always comes around quick because every week there's something new to look at, to work on. But yeah, look, it's again, it's a terrific fight. It gets the juices going. When you've got a platform like DAZN globally showing a fight that is really a domestic blockbuster, but will get global eyes on it. You know, that Eubank name, doing things a little bit different to let's say Junior's path. You know, this is sort of he's going down that world title route. He's getting up the rankings, and you know, this is no doubt a step up. And you know, Jack Catrol, real gentleman, fantastic fighter. Can't really say a bad word about him. It's just, you know, sort of try and want to build a bit of, you know what, for fight week, but really is just a very good fighter, and seems like a real gentleman. So it's going to be a terrific fight. I think that our man has the speed over him, and I think he's going to, you know, he's going to fight a style that maybe Catrol isn't quite expecting. At the same time, we know it's a challenge, and that's what boxing's about. It's about raising your game and finding out, you know, what the next level is. And Jack Catrol certainly is the next level. That's for sure. We go in there humbly, but at the same time, very confident.
I was watching some of the shoulder programming this morning, and I found it quite remarkable that Hearn actually took up boxing at age 22. So he's a late developer, and he's got this far in such a short amount of time, really, like 9 years.
Yeah, I mean, look, we signed him 4 years ago on a sort of a round deal, so you know, a very short-term deal. So just to look at him, and for me, it's the learning curve from fight to fight with him. So it's always, you've seen, you know, he's made mistakes, and you know, we all make mistakes, but he's made mistakes in big moments in fights, but put them right. And grown into the next fight where he's basically, you know, developed into a world-class operator, you know. But now it's time to show that. So, you know, he's been patient. He's coming to the sport later. You know, I'd argue that could be an advantage here.
And as much as this is a massive step up and a huge fight, he wins this next Saturday. And he is in there with your Devin Haney's, Ryan Garcia's, even your Conor Benn, the fight that he's wanted so much. It is really the key to the kingdom, this fight.
Yeah, and look, you know, it's once again, it's about going up a level to enter that world stage. That's what next week is for us. You know, it's not a world title fight. It's almost more than that, because it's the keys to the kingdom. You know, it's you know, the UK together with the US are one half of the boxing superpowers in terms of the markets, in terms of the commercial viabilities, and Harlem Eubank has it all to win, next Saturday night.
Will Chris Eubank Sr. be involved in the build-up?
Well, I never speculate on Eubank Sr. I've learnt that over my many years of being involved with the Eubank family. Never speculate, but I'm sure he'll have some role to play. We shall find out in fight week what role that is.
What do you make of Chris Eubank Jr. being brought in front of the board over his use of a sauna? You've worked with many commissions, Kalle, all over the world. Is this the right thing?
Look, you know, I'm not going to deny that saunas and baths and other methods. I've been around boxing pretty much since the day I was born. My babysitters were boxers, so I've grown up in a boxing dynasty of being surrounded by events and fighters. And you know, yes, that use is a use that goes on. There's no doubt about it. It's just some talk about it, others don't. And I think anyone who says that they don't know that people have used saunas in the past to make weight, or baths to make weight, or whatever it is, different weight cutting methods, you know, that it exists, you know. You see sweatsuits, you know, I'm not even familiar what the law is on sweatsuits. Guessing they're probably allowed, but they also have an impact on how you lose weight. And that's something really that you know, a medical professional, which I certainly am not and do not represent here. You know, it's really down to them. You know, there's lots of different ways of weight cutting that go on, especially last minute, where they, you know, in best cases they're using it to tweak the weight, you know, by a few hundred grams. In the worst case, they're shedding some serious weight, and it obviously clearly is very dangerous.
If you were still promoting Junior, would you have advised him against publicising the way he lost that weight and putting those videos up on Instagram of his use of the sauna?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't have expected him to talk to me about sauna use. But if he came to me with something like that, I mean, at the end of the day, so you're in a very tricky situation. What would I have done? I don't really know. I mean, I certainly wouldn't have advised him to go into a sauna to cut the weight. You know, there's healthier ways of cutting weight. There's different ways, and ultimately, a good camp, you don't need a sauna to cut weight. That's the bottom line to it. It's, you know, that sort of rush into the last minutes of a fight, and that can't have been good for him. Not only on a health level, first and foremost, the most important thing, but also sporting wise, he drains you. You know, I mean, that's pretty obvious. You know, there's some speculation that had the result gone the wrong way, that would have been the way out. You know, but I don't read too much into that. I think, you know, Junior doesn't really take on advice too well. He does what he wants to do, and, you know, that's fair enough. Each their own. I do remember that after the first Smith fight, after the fight, I was told that there was some use of different bath salts and things like that the day before the first Smith fight, where he got knocked out, and that was internally seen as a big part of that knockout. Whether that's the case or not, that I guess only Junior and the boxing gods will really know. But there was certainly use of some sort of a bath before the first one, I was told, after the fight. But yeah, I mean, again, the second Smith fight, he worked with a nutritionist. I don't know if that's the same nutritionist as he had for the Ben fight. But there, I've got to say, everything was pretty spot on, you know, and he came in good, and he boxed really well, you know, so you sort of see the difference. Also, if you look at almost the way he looked in the first Smith fight, he just didn't look himself. In the second one, he clearly made weight in a very, very professional manner.
Rewind a couple of weeks to Josh Kelly's performance in Newcastle. Didn't last long.
No, I'll be honest, I had to see the replay a few times, because I thought the fella took a dive. I mean, I thought it was the Phantom Punch. The Phantom Punch from the northeast. No, joking aside, he's clipped him good. He's clipped him to the temple, early doors. You know, happy. Easy night's work. Well over 1 million viewers on Channel 5 again. Great platform for him, and, you know, lots of interesting discussions ongoing at the moment. Murtazaliev in talks there, and there's a few other discussions as well. You know, Virgil Ortiz fight is a big one out there, but there's lots of fights, and, you know, definitely have an eye on what comes up after the Eubank Ben fight as well. You know, he's right in the mix on that. So yeah, interesting times.
Yeah, after the fight, I spoke to Adam Booth, and he kind of highlighted the Murtazaliev fight. Is that probably your number one target? Get that world title shot?
Not really. Well, obviously it's a big target, but it's not the number one target, because that could be that's really out of our control, because they've been ordered to fight Lubin, so we'd sort of be gate crashing that one. But at the same time, it's a really interesting fight, isn't it? World title. Josh has had that sort of top position in the WBO and the IBF now for quite a period of time. So he's going to be made mandatory sooner rather than later. And he's, you know, very much, for me, a big part of the future of British boxing. You know, you've got to look at this new era coming in, and who's going to be the stars of that era. You know, and there's some great names out there. You know, Harlem Eubank, we talked about, Josh Kelly, but you know, also the likes of Adam Azim, you know, Ben Whittaker, Dalton Smith, Moses Atuma. Of course, you can't look past the heavyweights. You know, there's lots of very interesting names in that space which are really coming through. You know, and there's still time for the old guard, but you've got to look a year or two ahead and see how many of them are still around. You know, you know, we're delighted to be promoting Mick Conlan, and this is definitely the one of the later chapters in his career. But he's still got a lot to give, you know. So there's some big events still to be done with the current sort of, you know, household names, so to speak. But it's the ones coming through now, and Josh is surely right at the head of that pile of, you know, he's already top of the world rankings. He's, you know, he's someone who's got a style as well that is very exciting.
Yeah, just a quick one on Mick Conlan. Spoke to Lee Wood on Monday, and he's made it quite clear he's not done yet. The Josh Warrington fight, the Mick Conlan fights, all make sense. But yeah, that's surely a big domestic rematch that you've got to look into.
Yeah, and it's one that when we signed Mick, it was right at the top of his list. Yeah, you know, he's gonna be out sort of late summer. That's something that we're ready to go with in the next 10 days. That's almost done. That'll be late summer, so you know you'll see Conlan again in a very interesting fight. Very interesting fight.
Kalle, just to
but Lee Wood is definitely on the agenda.
Kalle, just to finish up a bit of Misfits talk. Mams Taylor put out a post. What was it? I think yesterday or the day before, saying there's big changes to Misfits. 6 events a year. No filler fights, and they're all marquee names.
Yeah, look, we're very close to announcing our August and our September cards. Big nights. There's a pay-per-view and there's a X Series base event as well, and there's 6-7 main events within those two dates, and that's sort of what he's getting at. Is it's not we're looking at more to produce the cards, and it's, you know, look, we've had 3 years of Misfits now, and we've sort of seen the people that work and the ones we want to be working with, and the ones that have worked for Misfits. So yeah, we know that we can start to really make cards where you don't get those. You know, we had to do certain fights to feel out people. You know, they're interesting for the public. Are they interesting? Are they, you know, do they even function in this space? And I think we're sort of past that phase now. So you're going to see cards where you recognise the A and the B side, and you know, it's sort of fun. I mean, we're still going to get. We get every day. We'll probably get about 50 new requests on can we be on Misfits. You know, I've had about 5 on the way to work this morning. But those scaffolders down Notting Hill. No. You keep working at it, son. Pass them every morning. Hey, can we get on Misfits? And I'm like, yeah, brother. We keep going.
That's the nicest no ever.
Yes, yeah. I'll get so many of those. Yeah, and in the weirdest places as well. Be out with my daughter walking in the park, and I've got like a couple of kids coming over. Hey, can we be on Misfits? You know, I'm like, okay, right.
Is there any like proper random celebrities who you would never think would want to fight?
Mo Farah. You know, we had a chat at ringside not so long ago, actually. We swapped numbers, and I should give him a call on Misfits once. I remember one that we're still in talks with, but he's got so many things going on, was the winner of season 1 Traitors as well. Harry, good lad.
Sure, it's season 1, like Big Brother.
Yeah, I think it was
season 2. I think it is actually season 2.
It was the first one I watched. but he's a quite right character, and he boxed Army, didn't he? So he's got some boxing background. So yeah, no, it's a space that and there's a couple of new additions from round your way that we might see in some of the events we're announcing. So yeah.
What did you make when you saw Darren Till and Carl Froch just going hell for leather for about 2 days?
Fight, come on. Carl Froch against Darren Till is fucking blockbuster, right? That's doing some serious buys.
It's not realistic though, is it? Or is it, Kalle?
I mean, I've had a chat with Carl. I think Carl is always bang up for it, right? Carl just loves a fight. I think Carl with 90 will still love a fight. The question is whether you can, whether we can put it on, I don't know. I haven't actually spoken to Darren Till about it because I think Carl really wants to fight Jake Paul. But there's, Jake Paul's fighting this weekend, and, you've got to introduce yourself into this space, I guess, a bit. So, that could be an eliminator for Jake Paul. There you go.
Darren Till's actually said he would actually stick it on him.
Just as a standalone event in the UK, how big would that build-up be? How fun would that fight be to actually watch? I mean, it'd be great. I mean, 5 rounds of mayhem, There you go. That's really the title of the card. Super, super interesting. Yeah, super interesting.
Just last one on Carl Froch. Have you seen him giving it to Eddie Hearn over the past week?
I have. I don't know what's gone on there. And, I had my fair share of run-ins over the years with Carl because we worked together on so many big fights. We had Kessler 1, then we had Abraham, then we had Abraham, then we had Kessler 2. I was very much involved in the Super Six at the time. Then obviously I came on board with George for the famous 80,000 at Wembley fight. I remember getting in the ring, and obviously wasn't my highlight of my promotional career. With George, obviously, been on the losing side of things, but Carl's come over to me in the ring. I'll never forget it. And it was something about. I was like, all right, Carl, this is your moment, and I'm sort of gone to congratulate him, and he's grabbed me. He's gone, we don't need to be nemesis anymore, and it was weird because I was always sort of in the opponent's corner, and I remember getting right under his skin, and we had a laugh about this recently with each other. There was this victory when Kessler won the first fight, and I celebrated like it was the World Cup. And I was a lot younger. There was a lot more testosterone flowing, and it was just this moment of the build up to that fight. It was the ash cloud in Iceland. We had to get him over for the fight in Denmark, and me and Carl, we didn't see eye to eye. If you look it up, there's a few good quotes of Carl's about me at the time. He said something along the lines of, "My birth certificate was a apology from the condom factory to my parents, and if he caught me down a dark alley." And these quotes, they're still out there somewhere, and they were brilliant. At the time, I didn't find them so brilliant, and we had a right back and forth. But that was genuine. It was fun. It was and now we get on really well, and it's cool. So I don't know. I've gone tangents here, haven't I? I don't know what's happened with him and Eddie. No, not a clue. Not a clue. But he's funny to watch, isn't it? Real popcorn stuff. So look, he's got his YouTube channel, which is doing really well, Carl. And I'm sure it's getting some numbers on the back of that. And then, Eddie loves his numbers as well on social. So they might be putting this all on. I don't think so, but you never know. Definitely not Coog.
Yeah, how would you feel?
I don't think so either. But it is bizarre. You work those fights, In fact, our first interview was at the Kessler Froch 2 fight at the O2. So,
So how would you feel good?
Eddie came on with Carl late. He came on in the Andre Ward fight. He wasn't around for the first Froch-Till fight. That was Hennessy, and so yeah. But I don't know. I think that. Yeah, look, Carl's been critical of AJ. Eddie's promoting AJ now, and Carl will feel also, well, don't forget you promoted me, and so there'll be a bit of taking sides there, and Carl's just been saying his opinion, and that's wound Eddie up because he's attacking his charge at the moment, who he's promoting at the moment, and Carl will definitely be prodding a few buttons that are a bit more uncomfortable, and it just makes it interesting because, of course, he was doing the same thing he's doing for AJ. Now he was doing for Carl at one stage, so interesting stuff.
How would you feel if someone like Kessler or Abrahams, someone you had a very close relationship to when you was promoting them, started a YouTube channel and started giving you a load of shit?
I think I'd find it quite funny. Yeah, I'm quite chilled like that, I've had Eubank Jr. come out and call me a scumbag, right? So I'm sort of used to it. And that's a bit more direct than what Carl's doing. But at the same time, mate, you get the wrong fella. I've been around the block a few times. So I have had fighters have a pop at me. But yeah, generally they get silenced. That sounds all wrong, doesn't it? No, I can take criticism, I can take insult, I'm not too bothered. Sticks and stones may break my bones.
Exactly, Kalle. Thank you very much for speaking to IFLTV. Anything else you'd like to add before we finish? Absolutely not. Looking forward to next week, we have the big one. Harlem Eubank, Jack Catrol from Manchester, live on the zone. A proper British domestic blockbuster, which sees the winner moving on to world title. Simple as that. Kalle, thank you very much, mate. Cheers. And watch Niall Brown. Watch Niall Brown next week. Well, we haven't got him here today with our rising talents because he's fighting next week. Watch Niall Brown. That is an absolute cracker. I think he's 15-0 now. Cracking talent on the undercard. Watch that. I've got to leave with that one. Tune in next Saturday night, live from the AO Arena.